Yo, hip-hop heist, man. What up? We back at it with another reaction, man. Charlemagne defends Joe Budden and checks Angela RYE pod co-host over QueenzFlip Marc Lamont Hill fight. Alright, man. We about to get into another article that we about to react to. Shout out chiggsmooth for bringing us this article, man. We appreciate him making his content. He really up there with it. Go give him a follow. With that being said, man, we gonna get right into this. So hit that like and subscribe, man. Hit that bell to turn on the notifications when we go live, and that's it, man. Let's get to it.
Sometimes you just gotta understand there's certain people out there that you will never ever understand. And that's completely okay because everybody's different. Now, last week, we saw Joe Budden and Ish run a good two-man play, responding back to Angela RYE and her podcast crew, the Native Land Podcast. This all stemmed from Marc Lamont's Hill heated argument with Flip. Flip and Marc had a conversation behind the scenes about contracts and money. That conversation eventually spilled into some sneak dissing and some jokes on the podcast. And if you're not a fan of the Joe Budden podcast, it's hard to understand certain jokes, certain disses, certain subs that these guys will throw at each other. Most of the clips that go viral from the Joe Budden podcast is arguments. From Joe and Ish arguing to maybe Joe and Flip to Flip and Ish. If you're not a fan of the podcast, you'd probably think, yo, these guys hate each other. All they do is argue with each other, try to prove each other wrong, especially when some of the arguments are about women. So if you've got a friend like Marc Lamont Hill who's got a PhD and is on the podcast, you're probably pissed off asking why Marc would ever waste his time being around these guys. Angela RYE and her podcast crew basically were coming down pretty hard on Flip. They tried to paint Flip as a guy with little to no intellect, especially after Flip claimed Marc Lamont Hill was using tricky words. Now, people might not like Flip's character on the podcast. Sometimes he might come off as uninformed, but if you guys actually watch his content outside of the Joe Budden podcast, the guy knows exactly what he's doing. And also, the Joe Budden podcast is not a news network. It's not CNN, it's not Fox News. It's a podcast meant to have conversations that you would have around your friends. Obviously, when you get bigger, there's more responsibilities. People might not want to hear you talk about what stripper ass you slapped last weekend, or how many times you got caught cheating by your girl. Now, in a very surprising twist, on the new episode of the Native Land Podcast, Charlemagne was on the podcast. If you guys do not know, I believe Charlemagne, along with Angela RYE and also Chris Moreau, are all founders of the podcast, which also caused some people to think that maybe Charlemagne sent these guys to talk badly about the Joe Budden podcast just to get a little bit of traction. Now, Charlemagne was not holding any punches. Charlemagne went on the podcast and actually told them, yo, I think you guys were wrong. That's right, you guys. Charlemagne was actually defending the Joe Budden podcast, so much so that even he himself could not believe it.
Speaking about, not saying I wanted to talk about it on the show. I said I just want to talk to you personally. And then, when I saw what, Joe Budden said about it, I agreed with Joe. I felt like, it came off, very elitist, very Jack and Jill, very... I got my nose up at these Negroes over here, and I don't think that you don't make any strides in connecting community by doing that conversation in the way that it was done.
If I'm arguing with a fool from a distance, you can't tell the difference. I don't need to be where fools gather. If somebody else feels called to say, no, it is my ministry to go inform, to go educate this particular group of people, I would never shit on that. Like, that's just not even my way. I'm like, live and let live, go do it. That's just not what I choose to do.
I understand. I guess the issue comes, and I can't believe I'm on here defending the Joe Budden podcast, right? but I guess the issue is, I don't think fools go together at the Joe Budden podcast. Like, I don't think anybody in that room... I
didn't say that, for the record.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in that room is a fool. And I also feel like, we should be happy that people like Marc Lamont Hill want to be on big black platforms. I think that's the biggest problem I have right now is that, we tend to knock, certain platforms when what we should be doing is infiltrating those platforms. Like, I know everybody likes to, go at Stephen A. Smith. I want to see more black elected officials, more black politicians, more black spiritual leaders, more black activists, more black people with something to say about black issues go on platforms like Stephen A. Smith. Because all the white elected officials are taking advantage of it.
You know why they're taking advantage of it? Because they're laughing at a fool. That when people because I think that's such an important point. White politicians are going on there because they are elevating him to a position, and they only do this specifically in the black community. They are elevating him into a position that he did not earn. He is an expert in sports, and so you will have white people all the time pluck an entertainer. Right. Well, whatever he expert in is not politics, is not policy.
But
and if you're gonna pluck an entertainer,
he has an audience.
An audience does not equate to intellect or intelligence.
You guys,
I'm not saying
I want to hear what you have to say about defending Stephen. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying these black people who have these large audiences, instead of sitting on the sidelines complaining about them having a large audience and who didn't earn what, how about go on that platform and deliver some of that truth or some of that intellect that you have to his audience? Like, even if you sit around and you talk about, you saying about the guy, the person that sits outside of your stoop and they have a lot of misinformation, or you talk about the people that were saying the things about Obama. Those people will continue to have misinformation if somebody doesn't go to them and inform them.
But this was the point that you missed. I'm sorry. Let me just respond, please. This is the point that maybe you missed. I'm saying, when I'm trying to inform you, when I'm saying, no, that is actually not true about Obama, and somebody saying, yes, it is, because okay, you are not curious at that point. You are not receptive. Right. I can't feel your bucket is full. You don't want to hear what I have to say. Number two, I'm not complaining about anyone having a large audience. I'm complaining about who his audience is. He has a large audience of mostly conservative white folks, and they are treating him. This is no diss to Stephen. Do you have data to back
that up, Tiffany? Do you have statistics that say Stephen A. Smith's audience is majority conservative white folks?
I do. Nielsen ratings, or his ESPN show, Nielsen ratings qualifies that.
Well, no, that's ESPN. I'm talking about his podcast, because most of the time when he's spewing political takes,
I don't know his podcast. I just know he built his audience on a majority of white people. So I don't, and I would love to dig into, and I'm happy to come on here next week, because I would love to somebody to prove to me that his audience is a majority of black people.
See, that's a feeling. But that's a fact. So does that make you anti-intellectual because you're spewing feelings instead?
No, but it's not even. I'm going to respond to this. It's not even a feeling, though.
There's literally 5 minutes left in the conversation.
But I want to respond to what he said.
You guys haven't let anybody else weigh in here.
I'll weigh in, but I'm going to respond to this. He said that's a feeling or an opinion. Not necessarily. It's somewhat informed, because if you look at who his audience, how he built his audience, the suggestion that a majority of his audience will be comprised of black people is not a well-informed one.
All right, informed or not, man, if you ain't got numbers to back up what you think, what you saying, then nobody really wants to listen to that, because that goes back to feelings. Like Stephen A. Smith, unless you have the proof or the numbers, we don't know who his fan base is. Yes, he's been on cable TV his whole career, but with that being said, that still doesn't show proof of who his fans are. You know what I mean? And QueenzFlip is one of the most brilliant guys out there. I mean, he built a following off the comedy that he does, right? But does not take away from the intellect that he might have. You get what I'm saying? So she really has a strong opinion for sure, but just to can't call it fact, if you're not showing proof of numbers. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, let's keep it going.
It's logic to say most of his audience are white people. Are you suggesting that most of his audience are black people?
Like, you said Marc Lamont Hill shouldn't be on Joe Budden's show. Why? You said
Did I say he shouldn't be?
You actually said he should be on CNN.
Yes, so that's the difference between saying he should not be on Joe Budden. I'm saying he should be on CNN because he should have never gotten fired from CNN. If Mark is happy on Joe Budden's podcast, more power to it. What I said was they lack an understanding of Mark. I felt like he's disrespected on that podcast based on clips that I had seen. What Angela said, and Angela caught a lot of strays for things I said, so I want to be clear. What Angela referenced was a moment where they dismissed his humanity on that show when he talked about his friends being killed in Palestine. And I do think that is based on what I've seen, I do think that is a consistent pattern where I do feel like Mark is not necessarily well received there. But Angela wants to get other people, so I'll be quiet.
I will say Joe did apologize.
Leonard and Tiffany, it's more than just you two in here. Just hold on. You the one that got a hold on. Let me get get these dudes in here.
I know, but Joe did
This is crazy.
But Joe did apologize for that moment.
We gonna get to all that if you two will let somebody else talk.
Now, you can tell most of the podcast crew feel like, yo, maybe we were wrong. Maybe we should not be as condemning as we were to the podcast, but as you guys heard, Tiffany Cross did not feel like she did anything wrong. Not gonna lie to you guys, from her tone, maybe it's just me, but she comes off as a hater. Somebody that's pissed off that Joe Budden and his podcast has gotten to crazy heights, which goes back to the criticism that some people have about intellectuals. They do not know how to concede when they're completely wrong. Tiffany Cross was way too blinded to realize that Charlemagne was trying to tell her, yo, me and Joe Budden are pretty much the same. I resonate so much with that podcast because that's what I was doing my entire career. From the ignorant jokes to the conversations they have, that used to be my bag. I personally have said some crazy shit. The Joe Budden podcast is an entertainment podcast. If anything, you should be pissed off at Mark for joining the podcast if you feel like Mark does not belong there. But
yeah, man, you can't be hating. It did sound like Tiffany Cross was hating. And it goes back to like, bro, he's literally an entertainment podcast. Charlemagne entertainment podcast. I mean, what the podcast that they're on, you know, the females, like, at the end of the day, it's entertainment. But, you know, don't get it wrong, like, to be where Joe and Charlemagne and QueenzFlip and Marc Lamont are, like, it takes intellect for sure. You cannot say that nobody, Stephen A. Smith, like, it takes intellect, it takes strategy, it takes consistency. Just showing up every day, like, that's brilliance. You know, that's not just and some of it is muscle memory, but at the end of the day, man, she sounded like she was hating. I don't know, but y'all let me know in the comments. Yeah, go follow chiggsmooth. We appreciate him bringing us this article to react to. We are hiphopheist, man. That's what we do. We react to all the bulls. But yeah, let's keep it going, man. Hiphopheist. Like and subscribe. We're going to get out of here. Peace.